So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I hope that I am unmute and you can hear me. Thank you. Thank you for nodding. It's very helpful. So today we have a side event in the margin of the third Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom, a meeting usually for the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and the experts, which deal about religious liberty. And originally, these kind of events are promoted by the Department of State of the United States, and now is really involving a number of countries. So then tonight and this morning and this afternoon, we will have an event on tax justice and religious freedom. And we will analyze the case of Tai Ji Men and beyond. The event was organized by CESNUR, the Center for Studies in New Religions, and together with the Human Rights Without Frontiers. So very shortly, most probably you read the announcement of this event, but I will just shortly remind you that this event is to analyze the tax justice and religious freedom, which is increasingly interacting. The European Court of Human Rights is just one jurisdiction that ruled that the tax system cannot be used to discriminate against religious minorities. One of the longest lasting tax cases raising issues of religious liberty involved the Taiwan-based spiritual movement Tai Ji Men. The situation is that after 24 years of litigations, the issue has not been fully solved to this very day. Should monetary offers the devotees give to the spiritual leaders and organizations be treated as tax-exempt gifts or as taxable payments? That's exactly the goal of the meeting of today. And do the governments have the right to discriminate between the gifts given to legitimate spiritual movements and groups they label as cults? The implications go well beyond the Tai Ji Men movement and are crucial for religious freedom throughout the world. So that is the main title and the main objective of our discussion today. And to introduce you to the discussion, I would like to play the first one video, which will be explaining and letting us to better understand what exactly the spiritual movement Tai Ji Men is. And this video is a self-presentation of their cultural activities and also includes statements about Tai Ji Men by presidents of Taiwan and other political authorities. Please watch the video.
Over the past 50 years, Tai Ji Men Dizi have been not only practicing Qigong to improve themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually, but also conducting various forms of cultural exchanges to spread the ideas of conscience, love, and peace. Tai Ji Men has never done any fundraisers or accepted any public donations. Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi have self-funded trips to 101 nations and presented over 3,000 performances to foster a culture of peace.
For the past 35 years since its founding, your esteemed organization has upheld its objectives of loyalty, filial piety, love of the country, and love of society.
Tai Ji Men is an ancient Menpai of Qigong and martial arts, passed down from generation to generation. It's like a big warm family. All Dizi are energetic and healthy, physically and mentally. Under Zhang Menzhen's leadership, the Dizi not only practice self-cultivation, but also spread kindness to help the world. Through international culture exchanges, they foster love for the world, promoting the idea of love and peace worldwide.
Every time we see Tai Ji Men, we see energy, warmth, and love. We all admire Dr. Hong's compassion and would like to see Tai Ji Men practice this worldwide. Let Taiwan stand out and let the world come in.
Furthermore, under the Damon leadership, Tai Ji Men has been actively promoting Taiwan all over the world as a non-government organization, bringing Taiwan to the international forefront. In the future, with Dr. Hong's leadership, I hope that Tai Ji Men will continue to work with the government. Let us use our positive influence and move Taiwan forward with continued progress. Let the world see Taiwan.
Let me tell you, it's very emotional. And for me, it's been a great experience. Having a World Summit for Love and Peace, this is what the world needs. So I want to commend you, and I want to somehow show you my support and the support of the Dominican people.
We really appreciate this ceremony because it has to do with the most important values that my country has embraced.
A very simple golden round shaped bell like this can change the world if our hearts goes with that sound, the sound of world peace and love.
Truly inspiring, and I hope that I will be able to give to the message that Dr. Hong has brought us tonight. Thank you.
Tai Ji Men understands this, that our conduct must mirror our words, must match our sentiments, and examples of the kind before you today are pointers in the direction in which we should travel.
This is the efforts of this organization to inspire humanity into truly treading a path that would be sustainable and that will promote well-being for all life forms and happiness for the human being.
Although Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi have been persecuted for over 2 decades, they continue to foster love, peace, and conscience around the world. The Taiwanese government should redress injustices against Tai Ji Men and truly respect this precious cultural group, which has been a great cultural advocate for Taiwan.
Now that we have better understanding of what exactly the Tai Ji Men group is, now I am inviting you to watch a new movie directed by Professor Massimo Introvigne, who is trying in the movie to present better understanding about what exactly the problems with the Tai Ji Men tax case is. So please watch the movie.
A question of justice. The Tai Ji Men tax case in Taiwan. Taiwan is known as a beacon of democracy in a region plagued by dictators. Yet, in 2020, thousands took to the streets to protest serious violations of human rights on the island. They were members of Tai Ji Men, a Taiwanese spiritual movement based on esoteric Taoism. It promotes a holistic development of mind and body, rooted in the practice of Qigong, including teachings about martial arts and other traditional techniques. Thousands of Tai Ji Men members regularly bring culture to the world through events that have been praised by political authorities, both internationally and in Taiwan. Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy was founded in 1966 by Dr. Hong Daozi, who is also well known throughout the world for his promotion of world peace and dialogue between religions and cultures.
I could see Tai Ji Men having a very, very positive effect for Taiwanese society.
Dr. Hong's path as a spiritual teacher has not been easy. Religious liberty is something Taiwan has achieved through a bumpy road only. In 1996, largely for political reasons, the government cracked down on religious and spiritual movements, accused of supporting opposition political parties. The campaign also targeted Tai Ji Men, although it had not taken political sides. On December 19, 1996, Tai Ji Men facilities were raided and Hong was arrested. He and his wife's assets, including private holdings not connected with Tai Ji Men, were frozen. These actions were carried out upon orders of Taipei Court Prosecutor Ho Guanren, who developed a personal vendetta against Hong and Tai Ji Men, and was later recognized by Taiwan's Control Yuan, the body entrusted with checking illegal activities by public officials. Prosecutor Ho promoted a self-help association of so-called victims of Tai Ji Men, which was found by the Taipei District Court to be a false organization whose leaders had created bogus claims. The court also found that there were no victims. On April 15, 1997, Prosecutor Ho indicted Hong, who was freed on bail on May 26, his wife and 3 Tai Ji Men members for operating a fraudulent cult. Ho even accused Hong of raising goblins, something which is totally foreign to Tai Ji Men's practices. From his public statements, it looked like Prosecutor Ho was the one who really believed in goblins. Between April and June 1997, Prosecutor Ho wrote to state and local administrations ordering the dissolution of Tai Ji Men, and even that water and electricity supplies to Tai Ji Men facilities in Taipei be cut. The Ministry of the Interior and local governments later annulled these orders and declared them illegal, as no decision had yet been rendered against Hong. In fact, Prosecutor Ho's case eventually collapsed. On September 25, 2003, Dr. Hong and his co-defendants were acquitted of all charges by the Taipei District Court. On December 13, 2005, the High Court of Taipei confirmed on appeal the first-degree verdict favorable to Tai Ji Men. On July 13, 2007, the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court of Taiwan pronounced the final acquittal of Tai Ji Men defendants, declaring them innocent of all charges. Compensation for the wrongful detention was given to Hong and his co-defendants. However, a byproduct of Prosecutor Ho's ill-fated actions remained. Instigated by Prosecutor Ho, the National Tax Bureau accused Hong of tax evasion and issued tax bills for the years 1991 through 1996. What was the basis of these claims? As it happens in most spiritual movements, members of Tai Ji Men, who are called Dizi, offer money as a gift to Hong, whom they recognize as their shifu, or master. These gifts are included in so-called red envelopes. The National Tax Bureau claimed that the content of the red envelopes should not be considered as a gift, but as a tuition fee members pay for receiving training in a so-called cram school, meaning a school where students engage in intensive study of a subject for a short period of time. Gifts are not taxable, while cram school's tuition fees are. In Taiwan, there are many Qigong and martial arts organizations, and none has ever been taxed for gifts given to their masters. The Ministry of Education in Taiwan, which has direct regulatory authority over cram schools, declared 3 times, from 1997 through 2000, that Tai Ji Men is not a cram school. Tai Ji Men is indeed not a cram school. In 1999 and 2000, both Taiwan's finance minister and deputy finance minister publicly stated that since the Tai Ji Men tax prosecution derived from a criminal case, if Hong and his co-defendants will be acquitted in the criminal court, then the tax claims would be withdrawn as well. However, this did not happen. Hong and his co-defendants were acquitted of all criminal charges, yet the National Tax Bureau continued to claim that the money in the red envelopes was a disguised cram school tuition fee and maintained the tax bills. Note that the 2007 Supreme Court decision that acquitted Hong and his co-defendants from all criminal charges explicitly stated that they were not guilty of tax evasion. In 2002, following instructions by the Ministry of Finances, the National Tax Bureau conducted a random survey among Tai Ji Men Dizi to determine whether they regarded their contributions as gifts or tuition fees. All the 206 Dizi who responded indicated that they considered their contributions as gifts. However, the Tax Bureau declared that only 9 respondents had clearly indicated that their contributions were gifts. The statement was false, but the Tax Bureau refused to release the answers to the survey. Based on the Bureau's false statement about the survey, the Ministry of Finances refused to rectify the tax bills against Hong and Tai Ji Men. They appealed to administrative courts, and Taiwan's Supreme Administrative Court ruled in favor of Tai Ji Men on August 6, 2009. On July 17, 2010, the manipulation of the survey was exposed at a public hearing in the Legislative Yuan, i.e. Taiwan's parliament. After these developments, the National Tax Bureau agreed that a new open survey should be carried out. This happened only in 2011, and results were disclosed in 2012, revealing that there had been 7,401 respondents, and all had answered that they regarded the content of the red envelopes as gifts. The National Tax Bureau had promised to be guided by the results of the survey, yet they reacted by proposing to consider 50% of the money received in the red envelopes as gifts and 50% as tuition fees. This was obviously not consistent with the unequivocal results of the survey. Tai Ji Men thus started another long journey through Taiwanese courts, supported by legislators and other public authorities, and by human rights organizations throughout the world. From this long and painful struggle, they emerged victorious. In 2018, the Supreme Administrative Court ruled that the content of the red envelopes should be treated as gifts rather than as tuition fees. The basis of the 20-year persecution of Tai Ji Men by the National Tax Bureau had finally been removed. Unfortunately, this was not the end of Tai Ji Men's tribulations. The National Tax Bureau had initially alleged tax evasion for 6 years, from 1991 to 1996. After the 2018 decision by the Supreme Administrative Court, it agreed to reduce the tax bills for the years 1991, 1993, 1994, 1995, and 1996 to zero. But based on the claim that for 1992, a decision had been rendered by the Supreme Administrative Court in 2006 and was final, it maintained the tax bill for 1992, including interest. Both the Dizi and the public opinion in Taiwan understood that this was a political vendetta after Tai Ji Men had publicly proved the National Tax Bureau wrong. Clearly, what happened in 1992 was not different from what happened in the other years, and justice would have mandated to deal with it in the same way. Patently wrong decisions can always be revised if justice has to be served. The tax authorities treated Tai Ji Men as a cram school and taxed it accordingly. Since the finding of fact was incorrect, the application of law was wrong as well. Therefore, the incorrect court order should not be executed. For example, when you clearly know that a person is wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death, you should not execute the person. You should try to correct the mistake and uphold justice. If the person is killed as per the sentence, then he is unjustly killed by the government. Now that the tax authorities have admitted their mistakes and the criminal court has ordered state compensation, it is unjust for the government to auction the assets of Tai Ji Men's leader. If it does, that is theft of his property. No appeal by Taiwanese or international politicians, scholars, or human rights organizations stopped this vendetta. Not even courts of law were heard. On May 5th and July 23, 2020, Taipei High Administrative Court wrote twice to the National Tax Bureau of the Central Area, asking them to treat 1992 as the other. All this was to no avail. In August 2020, properties belonging to Hong were seized and auctioned, then confiscated after the auction was not successful, despite massive peaceful street protests in Taiwan and appeals by international NGOs. It may seem that this is a battle about money, but it isn't for Tai Ji Men. They spent in legal fees only, in 24 years of struggles, more than they would have paid had they settled with the National Tax Bureau. Insisting on conscience and justice, they did not settle. By settling, they would have admitted that they had been guilty of tax evasion, something that is both against their principles and factual truth. On the other hand, we can suspect that it really was about money for some bureaucrats. In cases of alleged tax evasion, they get a bonus on the tax bills, and some did get the bonus for the 1992 Tai Ji Men tax bill. It is not surprising that scholars and human rights activists from all over the world raised their voice in support of Tai Ji Men. Theirs is not a minor case hanging on technicalities. It has widespread implications, both for Taiwan and the world. Significantly, already in 2005, the Control Yuan had listed the Tai Ji Men case as one of the most important human rights incidents where it had to intervene. Taiwan is in a difficult moment in its history. Taiwan needs international friends, and it also benefits from its well-deserved public image of a country where, unlike in mainland China, human rights and freedom of belief are respected. The Tai Ji Men case is a relic of a bygone era, when religious liberty was still not fully respected in Taiwan. The petty tax vendetta against Tai Ji Men, however, raises doubts on whether the problems of the past have been fully overcome and is detrimental to Taiwan's international image. The fact that Tai Ji Men's properties were seized and auctioned on the eve of the establishment of Taiwan's National Human Rights Commission on August 1, 2020, was an unfortunate coincidence, which contributed to the impression that the official rhetoric is at odds with the behavior of some rogue bureaucrats. The case has also international implications. It is a perpetual temptation for politicians and others in power to persecute religious and spiritual minorities that they, for whatever reason, do not like through the misuse of the tax system. The European Court of Human Rights is just one among several authorities that have ruled repeatedly that tax bills cannot be used to discriminate against religious and spiritual movements a government does not approve of.
The European Court of Human Rights stated in a ruling in 2011 in the case Association of Jehovah's Witnesses versus France that through its tax administration, France had unduly harassed a group that had been illegitimately put on a blacklist of so-called harmful cults. The court went to explain that monetary offers made by devotees to their spiritual leaders or organizations are obviously gifts. The court concluded that considering donations as taxable payments is a typical way that some governments use and misuse to discriminate against movements that they don't like. But this is illegal under international human rights law.
I think that it is as bad, if not worse, to allow an injustice to continue as it is to create the injustice in the first place. And that is what's happened here with Tai Ji Men.
Tai Ji Men are not fighting for themselves only. They raise a crucial question of justice, freedom of belief, and human rights. In this sense, we are all Tai Ji Men. The injustice perpetrated against them is injustice against all of us. Their victory will be our victory.
Now, after the videos, I believe that the problems are much clearer why we organize this event. And now I invite our panelists. We have tonight 6 panelists to discuss this issue. So and I invite the panelists not to speak more than 10 minutes, to make the presentation not longer than 10 minutes. So the first panelist tonight is Marco Respinti. Marco is an Italian journalist who has written extensively about the tax justice. He is also director in charge of the magazine on religious liberty, Bitter Winter. So please, Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me to address this important topic with such a distinguished audience. Of course, we're speaking today about the fundamental human right, which is, of course, religious liberty. All of us are convinced that religious liberty is the most essential human right because it addresses directly the most essential question posed by the very human nature, which is God, or the supreme being, or the overarching spiritual force, as you may like to call it. One can decide for God or existence or not. That is not the problem. But the problem of God is the quintessential human problem. One person need even not to be a religious person to acknowledge this. This is a rational question, basically. Famous atheists have acknowledged this, from Karl Marx to Charles Darwin, from Friedrich Nietzsche to Stephen Hawking. The importance of religious freedom as the fundamental question is formally underlined by the fact that other fundamental human rights derive from religious liberty. For example, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of to assemble. In fact, if a person is denied the first liberty of all, how can he or she fully enjoy others? So this is the basic assumption that we, I'm sure, all share. The point is that as far as late as the year 2020, religious liberty is conculcated into many countries. There are some countries who persecute religions, minority or majority religions, in a very harsh way, directly, through torture, through unlawful imprisonment, even killings. But this is not the whole scenario. We also have another form of persecution, which is much more suitable for democratic society. And that is what we call, in Italy at least, but I think it's an international expression, administrative persecution, meaning that religion are not persecuted directly, but they are persecuted in an indirect way, using administrative tools as weapons to curtail the rights to religious freedom of people. Taxes are the most important and favorite weapon of too many governments, or parts of too many governments within democratic society, to tamper with religious rights of minorities and majorities sometimes. The Tai Ji Men case, as we just saw in the video and in the general presentation, is the best case to illustrate this. There are a lot of details, there are a lot of proofs ruling in favor of Tai Ji Men, yet political power uses taxes to fight against the most fundamental human right of a person. Taxes can be used to do many good things, but when it comes to overburden people and groups and organized religion, they amount to persecution as such. Taxes, some authors go that far to define some taxes as organized robbery. Maybe we won't go that far, but of course, when we see what Tai Ji Men has unlawfully been unlawfully put through, we should conclude that sometimes tools that it may be used for the good, like taxes, are instead used to repress legitimate human rights. I'm totally in favor of the conclusion of the video that we just saw. Today, we all are Tai Ji Men, especially in Western countries, especially in democratic society, where we do not face harsh, open persecution like in totalitarian regimes. Yet, the state or some organized political forces, some parties, some branches of national government use their power for the good to address evil. I think that we should all stand by Tai Ji Men, because again, as the video brilliantly said, the battle of Tai Ji Men is the battle for the most important, most essential human right, religious freedom, is the battle for freedom, is the battle for liberty, is the battle for justice, it is the battle for equal treatment of all before the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you for your presentation. Now I invite Kenneth Jacobsen, who is the professor at the School of Law of Temple University in Philadelphia. And he is a well-known scholar of tax law. I believe it would be very important for us to hear his position. So you have 10 minutes. And at the same time, I remind the audience that, that you can write the questions to the speakers in the chat. And if time allows us, we will be able to ask the speakers to respond. Please, Kenneth, the floor is yours.
And thank you for inviting me to this panel. And Marco, thank you for your remarks. And I'd like to follow up on those remarks. You know, we said in our United States Supreme Court 200 years ago that the power to tax is the power to destroy. And we value, as I know all of you do, we value in the United States our religious freedom. It's ingrained in our Constitution. It is something that we hold very dearly, as we do the separation of church and state, which is very important to allow religions that are not state-sponsored or state-dominant to thrive and to survive. And we do not like our tax authority in the United States. No one likes the Internal Revenue Service in the United States. But, and this is a big but, there's control, there is regulation, there is supervision, there is oversight, there are limits to which the Internal Revenue Service can go in the United States. And they will be restricted from abuses by our courts, by our legislature, and by the people rising up. What happened and what is continuing to happen to Tai Ji Men, in my experience, is absolutely unprecedented. You have had a failure, a collapse of all branches of government in Taiwan in the Tai Ji Men tax case. And I say that seriously and not lightly, because I have been to Taiwan, I have lectured in Taiwan, I have vacationed in Taiwan, I have grown to know a lot about Taiwan and its people. So these are not the comments of some outsider looking in. I've been there, I've experienced it. I have spoken to the Legislative UN. I've spoken to the Control UN. And let's look at what happened and the failure of government here, the control UN, which I just mentioned. In 2002, they issue rulings about the abuse by the prosecutor in this case. In 2009, they cite violations by the National Tax Bureau. In 2005, they cite the Tai Ji Men tax case as among one of the most egregious human rights violations in Taiwan. And yet, the National Tax Bureau continues. Let's look at the Executive UN. At the direction of the presidential office, the Executive UN convened the Intergovernmental Agency Group to try and resolve, as they should, the issue of Tai Ji Men. And they got together and they got the various departments, the various constitutional branches of government in Taiwan together and said, we're going to send out a survey. Let's get to the bottom of this for once and for all. We'll send out a survey. And the presidential office asked the Executive UN to do that. And the Executive UN did that. And the results came back, and the results were overwhelming. And despite the corruption by the National Tax Bureau, the results were overwhelming. And yet Tai Ji Men continues to be prosecuted and persecuted. The court system, the judicial court system, something that I hold dearly, something that I teach my students, something that I practiced for 30 years, something that I revere, the judicial system. You have the Supreme Court, the criminal division of the Supreme Court of Taiwan in 2007, finding no tax fraud, finding no tax evasion, finding absolutely no criminal conduct or inappropriate conduct. You have the High Administrative Court in 2018, finding that these contributions were gifts and not tuition for a cram school. And yet, Tai Ji Men continues to be persecuted. And finally, the Legislative UN, which has held hearings, which has written letters, which has done its own efforts as a separate branch of government to try and rein in the abuse of the tax authorities. And yet, despite the efforts of the well-meaning legislatures of the Legislative UN, Tai Ji Men continues to be persecuted. How is it that all of the branches of the constitutional government of Taiwan, every single one of them, have ruled in favor of Tai Ji Men, have supported Tai Ji Men, have concluded that the gifts to Dr. Wang were gifts and not tuition for a cram school for people to take exams, which is absurd because I've been to Tai Ji Men. I've met with the Dizi and I know what they are. How is it that every branch of government of Taiwan has failed in basic due process, has failed to enforce their own findings, their own conclusions? How is it that a tax authority can destroy a person and can try and destroy an organization? It is absolutely incomprehensible to me. It is the most gross deprivation of due process, the most gross violation of fairness, the most gross intrusion on religious liberty. And I would suggest it goes beyond that, because if the tax authorities can do this to an organization like Tai Ji Men, it could do it to anyone. And I believe that this is in my experience, the most extraordinary situation of a violation of human rights in the tax and religious freedom area that I have seen. As I said in the beginning, the power to tax is the power to destroy. Let me conclude by saying I commend Tai Ji Men for not giving in. They could have paid the tax and gone on. But sometimes principle matters. Often principle matters. And they, as a matter of principle, to not give in to this abuse by the tax authorities, I commend them for that. And then one plea to the government of Taiwan, to the president of Taiwan, and to the other constitutional branches of Taiwan. And that is to fix this. As I said, and you probably saw it in the video, allowing and perpetuating an injustice is as bad as inflicting that injustice in the first place. It is never too late to do the right thing, and the government of Taiwan should do the right thing and eliminate the tax from 1992, which is just absurd considering what has happened for 1991 and the other years, and to restore the property that was unlawfully seized. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the comments and remarks of the other panelists.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you for your wonderful speech. And yes, exactly. You're raising many questions, I believe, in your presentation. So now I will give the floor to Willy Fautre, who is a co-founder and director of Human Rights Without Frontiers in Brussels. Willy has published several articles on Tai Ji Men, and he knows the struggles that Tai Ji Men is facing very well. So Willy, the floor is yours.
The videos that we have just seen give us a very accurate picture of the persecution that Tai Ji Men and its disciples have been experiencing for 25 years now. The last episode of this saga took place a few months ago in beginning of August, I think, when Taiwan's National Taxation Bureau arbitrarily seized and auctioned properties that belonged to Dr. Hong, the founder and spiritual leader of the Tai Ji Men. This auction was only another episode of the long-term persecution by prosecutor Hu Guangying, who has abused his power, violated the law, and made false accusations to destroy Tai Ji Men through administrative channels. However, the video could not show all aspects of the repression, such as the detention conditions of Dr. Hong, and also the collateral suffering endured by other disciples who were arrested and also their families. First, about the detention of Dr. Hong. While Prosecutor Hu was conducting investigations, Dr. Hong was detained for nearly 4 months. During that period, he was transferred to different detention centers and placed in cells with violent criminals, drug addicts, and criminals to provoke fear and intimidate him. This strategy had a dual purpose, as Prosecutor Hu would also ask Dr. Hong's cellmates to testify against him. These testimonies often consisted of slander against Tai Ji Men and its leader. Prosecutor Hu carried out biased investigation with the sole purpose of justifying alleged charges and excluding any evidence that could exonerate Dr. Hong from any accusation. In French, it's called investigation à charge ou à décharge, which is a shorter expression than in English, where there is no equivalent. So Dr. Hong only, so the prosecutor only interrogated Dr. Hong 3 times for a total of 29 minutes over the course of a 117-day pre-trial detention, during which he was under the status of presumption of innocence. He was only asked 13 questions in all. Finally, he was declared innocent of all the imaginary charges arbitrarily pressed against him. During the interrogation, the prosecutor was very rude, would throw files, pound on tables, rant loudly, intimidate and coerce Dr. Hong. After Dr. Hong's first appearance in court, the judge refused to release him on bail. Throughout the entire judicial process, Prosecutor Hu did not notify Dr. Hong's lawyer about the charges against his client, which made him unable to exercise his right as a defense attorney. Furthermore, the living conditions that Dr. Hong endured during detention led to the deterioration of his health. He was held in damp, cold cells. One of his disciples sent him a new quilt, but instead he was given an old, dirty one. It is suspected that the prison authorities tampered with this other blanket so that to make Dr. Hong's body itch. It was so extreme that he would scratch to the point of breaking his skin and could hardly fall asleep due to the discomfort. Eventually, his feet became so swollen and painful from the damp conditions that he could hardly walk. And there were even concerns his feet would need to be amputated due to the damage done. And remember that he was declared innocent after 117 days in such conditions. During the second court hearing on the 26th of May, 1997, the judge noticed his swollen feet and knees and finally decided to release him on bail. Another example that I would like to highlight concern a person called Wang Dingchang, so a Tai Ji Men disciple, who was arrested during the December 96 crackdown. He was then working as assistant vice president for the largest publishing house in Taiwan, supervising over 500 employees. He had been a Tai Ji Men disciple for 7 years. A week after Dr. Hong's arrest, the police searched his house without a warrant and arrested him. During his detention, he was threatened, intimidated, coerced in attempts to force him to provide testimonies against Dr. Hong. During Wang Dingchang's interrogation, the officers contacted his employer, which destroyed his reputation and led to a forced resignation. As his family's sole earner, with a salary of about $7,000 per month, his family faced a financial crisis after he lost his job. Furthermore, it was challenging for him to find other work after his release due to the negative public attention circulating his case. At that time, Wang Dingchang's 3 daughters were all in school. They were mocked by their teachers and their classmates. Wang Dingchang was also ridiculed by friends, relatives, and neighbors. All these details that I revealed through this personal testimony from Wang Dingchang are not visible anywhere, but these are also realities, collateral damage, as it could be named, but it's experienced in such a way that it's not collateral at all. It is a vital damage for that family. So later, Prosecutor Hu began another case where Wang Dingchang was identified as one of the defenders. Although there was no concrete evidence at all for the charges, Prosecutor Hu did not drop the case, but instead sent it to private prosecutors. The defendants were then subjected to a series of lengthy court appearances and hearings. This was very costly for the defendants, as it took immense resources in the form of time and money, as well as causing irreparable damage to their reputation. After the case had gone for 3 years, the court finally declared all the defendants innocent. Thank you for that attention, for your attention, and especially to that tragic case, which only reflects what other members of Tai Ji Men also experienced. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Willy. Thank you. It's really, you gave a lot of details, additional details for us to understand the gravity of the situation. So now I invite Damon Tsai, who is a member of Tai Ji Men group himself, and I will ask him to present the situation from inside the movement, how they see the problems, what is happening to the movement.
So distinguished professors, scholars, experts, and honored guests, I'm really happy to be here to share my personal feeling and the involvement of the Tai Ji Men cases, because I think, actually, I'm the product director at the US-based semiconductor company, but I'm also the Tai Ji Men Dizi. So I want to take this chance to share with you why we are so insist to fight for the human right, for the justice, because just like the Professor Jacobsen, he mentioned that we can just pay for the money, then it's done. We don't need to waste our money to on the street to shout to our government who do the illegal auction. We can just go to the different country, keep promoting the love and peace. Why we are doing that? Because we really believe this is the right thing to do. Because I remember one expert ever mentioned, the injustice for one person is the injustice for everyone. And the violation of the human right for one person is the violation of the human right for the world. So that's why we think we have to fight for ourselves. We have to fight for the Tai Ji Men and also fight for the human right. So I want to share one story with you. It's about why I joined Tai Ji Men. So actually, I joined Tai Ji Men with my father when I was in the elementary school. So back then, I think the life is very simple, because I had a bleeding nose issue. So I just tried to flex the qigong and make me feel more healthy. So that's it. I think everything is great, and I feel I make more friends in the Tai Ji Men because we have many different brothers and sisters in different ages. But I remember clearly the following day of the December 19th, the incident. So I used to have the lunch with my classmates in the lunchtime, and one of my friends just speak in front of all my friends, said that, "Hey, Damon, are you and your parents defrauding people in Tai Ji Men?" So I was just 14 back then, and I really don't know how to. I really don't know how to respond to this question, because I have no idea. So when I back home, I turned on the TV. I saw a lot of news talking about the Tai Ji Men defrauding the people, Tai Ji Men raising the goblins, all the ridiculous news, and they are all in the headline. So I'm so nervous, and to be honest, I really don't know what is the truth and what is wrong, because I never see the goblin in Tai Ji Men. I never see. We never defrauding the people. We just practice ourselves and share our good experience with the others. So I just asked my father, "Am I doing the right thing or wrong thing?" So my father said, "Don't worry, we are doing the right thing." So that one sentence keep me believe the news is wrong and we are doing the right thing. So after long 10 years, I was so afraid to having lunch with my friends again. And I'm also trying to avoid to be part of the school activities, because I just worry about people just say again, "You're frauding, you are in the cult," something like that. So after 10 years, I remember it's the 2007, July 13, the justice eventually returned the Tai Ji Men justice. So at that day, when I see that news, I'm so excited. So I just pick up my phone and call my friends directly, say, "Hey, we are innocent. We are good group. We are good cultural performance group." But you know what? My friends just say, "Okay, so what? You are still in the cult." So back then, I finally realized that my human rights already violated by the media because the biased reporting cannot be fixed. Even the justice returned us the justice. So I think the media really need to have their own responsibility to protect the human right as well. I think that is a problem I saw every time when I turn on TV, see the news, they are always talking about something maybe not true, but they don't care because they just want more people to look at the news. And this is how my human rights will be violated. Even I don't know what is the human right back then because I was just a junior high school student. So another story I want to share is that I remember before our government, the justice returned the non-guilty case to Tai Ji Men, they still invite us to perform the cultural performance in some festival in front of the government building. So to be honest, I was so pissed. I said, why I want to do that? Why I want to pay for my money? I want to spend my own holiday to do the practice, even though you are still charging us wrongfully. I don't want to do that. Why? Why should I do that? But I remember very clearly that Dr. Hong said one thing to everyone. He said, it's very important to be loyal to your nation, to our country, because we are doing the right thing to the nation, to the world. So to be honest, I still cannot let it go. I still feel bad. I still feel angry, but I still try to understand why we want to do that. So in the past 10 years, we have done a lot of the things. So for example, if you know that there's a very big earthquake back to the 1999 in Taiwan. So 4 days after the earthquake hit, Dr. Hong just called, I think I remember over the 40,000 people, the leaders, just pray for the Taiwan, pray for the rest of the world, and also like the SARS in 2003, and even the COVID-19 this year, right? We also try to deliver the epidemic prevention manual that made by the Tai Ji Men. We are trying to ask everyone, be careful, wash your hand, drink your water, be healthy, be happy, because this is the best way to keep you safe from the disease. So after we have done all the stuff in the past 10 years, I start to understand why we are doing this. Because I think this is not just talking about if I feel better, that is not enough, because I need to make sure my family feel better, our nation is good, our neighborhood, all the country, all the world is good. That is the real good for the human being. That's why we are so dedicated to do these things, even they spend our own time, spend our own money, but it doesn't matter because we know this is the right thing to do. So why I also want to join this event, or I also travel around the world with the Shifu, because I think back to 1999, my father, he went to the Seattle with the Dr. Hong to join the Seafair Torchlight Parade. And there's one picture that really impressed me. My father was in the car with the Dr. Hong, and they are waving their hand to the people aside the street because we are doing the cultural performance. So I saw the video. Everyone, the citizen from the Seattle, they say, I love Tai Ji Men, I love culture, I love Taiwan. So that picture really deep into my heart. I just feel like I want to be my dad. I just want to do something good like him did. So when I grew older, I do have the chance to travel the world with the Dr. Hong. So for example, like the 2017, 2018, we went to the Bahrain by the invitation of the Bahrain government to do the cultural exchange with the cabinet minister and the cultural history, the director, and also the leader of the religions. So we are talking about how to make this world better, how to use your culture, how to use your belief to help each other by during the exchange, the good idea. I think that is very good things that we should. I think everyone should do that. And I think I did that because I saw my father do that, followed by the Dr. Hong. So one day I also want to follow my father, want to follow the Dr. Hong. And I think that is the real spiritual of the Shifu and the Dizi. And that is the most beautiful culture for the Tai Ji Men. I think that is very important. And I remember one last story I want to share is that I think the 2019, April 5th in the Vienna, United Nations. I was the host for the global summit because Dr. Hong is working hard, trying to promote the conscience. So in the end, the Berlin and the Kiribati, all the countries work together. Then United Nations declared that every year, the April 5th is the International Day of the Conscience. And when I was the host, I asked one question to the people in the building, and including the friends, the scholar, professor, and ambassadors. I said, please say one sentence about the conscience to your country, to your world. And I think the wording I hear, every word is beautiful. I think that is our word needed. So I want to dedicate my life to do that, to support the human right, to promoting the conscience and the beauty of the love and peace. I think as a human being, we all do that. And even like today's event, I think it's important. So back to the Tai Ji Men case, like you see from the video, the tax bureau, they ignore the justice result. They still insist to issue the tax bill, and also the administrative agency also illegally auction our property. That used to be the Tai Ji Men Center. We want to offer this center overly standard to more people to get health, to get the beauty mind, but they just sell our property. That's why we went to the street. I don't remember how many times I was on the street shouting for the justice. I got a sunburn. I lost my voice many, many times. And I keep thinking, why I'm doing this? And why they are not listening to people what we said. I feel so bad. But every time when I listen to that home, keep encourage us, please insist what we are doing because this is the right thing to do. And I remember that home, he was caught by the prosecutor, and I remember like for the 3 to 6 months. So I decided to stand up. And not only just myself, but also I bring my daughter onto the street. She's just 3 years old. Maybe she don't understand, but I still teach her fight for human rights, fight for conscience, love and peace. I want to give him the best human rights education when she was a child. And I think this is what my father and that home bring to me when I in the elementary school. So in the end, I want to share my grandparents, my parents, my family, my daughter, we are all in the Tai Ji Men. Although my grandparents already passed away, but I think if they are still looking at us, we are still committed, dedicate, and contribute to this world, to the human rights. I think they will feel very happy because their offspring still insist to do the right thing. So I really appreciate today I have the chance to share my feeling for the past 24 years. And also when I see more people start to stand up and speak for the right thing, I feel more confidence. I feel like one day we should fix the issue. And the day coming, I think this is not just for the Tai Ji Men. This is for the Taiwan. This is for the world. And this will be the very classic case to protect the human rights. So thank you very much. This is my speech today.
Thank you so much, Damon. So it was very interesting to have your internal perception of the things. And I just wondering, because if I may, because normally I will raise the questions from the chat at the end of the presentations, but still I want to ask you, Damon, because it was striking to hear that on one hand, there is no justice for you, but at the same time, the authorities are asking you to present in the cultural events. How to reconcile those two different things? It's like persecution and the promotion of the Taiwanese culture. What do you think?
Right. So just like I said at the beginning, I don't understand why you say we are called and you also invite us in front of all the different people to do the cultural performance. But then I realized that actually in the Taiwan, I still feel like the most people, most governors, they are still good people. But the terrible thing is that our current system, we just need 1 or 2 people. If they against the law, do some illegal stuff, they can hurt the human rights seriously. So for example, when we went to the control yuan and we said, please help us. Oh, they say, oh, this is the justice Yuan as duty, I cannot jeopardize the justice process. Or for example, like the prosecutor Hou Kuanren, the controller also mentioned that he against a lot of the law. But when we say, yeah, so why don't you punish him? And their response is that, oh, sorry, because it's over the due date, so you cannot do anything, even they know he is wrong. So that's why I think it's important that the current system, only few people can change the whole game. And like the professor also mentioned, if they are approaching the bonus, they just try to auction your property, no matter it's wrong or bad, or wrong or truth, because they just want to get a bonus. So that's why we really think from the system itself, we have to provide some guidance to the lawyers, for example, to stop all the bonus for like the tax bill or the auction, because the people pay for them to do that, right? If they have the bonus, they may just try to get the bonus and ignore the truth. So that's why I think that is very important to recall or evoke everyone's conscience, because only everyone has the conscience, and to do the things right, we can avoid this situation happen again.
Thank you, Damon, so much. Thank you so much. So now I give the floor to Alessandro Amicarelli, who is the human rights lawyer based in London, and he is the president of European Federation for Freedom of Belief. So, Alessandro, the floor is yours. 10 minutes.
Thank you, Rosita. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Thank you for the lovely videos and the previous presentations, which have covered a number of aspects of the Tai Ji Men case. Personally, as a lawyer, and our federation as well, and our friends' associations have witnessed and have been dealing with a number of cases of discrimination against religious and spiritual minorities and or their membership. In many cases, fiscal and tax issues have been used by governments to the detriment of some of these groups in order to stop their activities. For instance, and especially when these groups were growing too fast or when they were not liked much by the authorities. At times, these groups were denied the tax-exempt status, or the status was revoked after being enjoyed by the groups for some time. This happened also in Western countries, not only outside Europe, as someone may probably guess. Taiwan is now a full democracy, whose present status stems from a very complicated past, but after all the previous situations, the martial laws have gone since very long time. Taiwan is a very nice country, it's a great country. I share same views with the previous speakers about Taiwan. I was very glad to visit Taiwan. I had a chance to teach a human rights course at Suzhou University back in 2012. While traveling from north to south, east to west, I was very much impressed by the cultural, religious, and spiritual diversity of Taiwan, where, for instance, in the same building, worship places of very different religions and spiritualities can be found, one next to the other. Indeed, the tax case involving the group Tai Ji Men has lasted for far too long. Happily, most of the claims have been erased in court for a tax claim, except for a tax claim for the year 1992, which is still maintained by the tax office and which seriously risks to damage Tai Ji Men after having costed Tai Ji Men millions of Taiwanese dollars in trials. The ongoing case involving Tai Ji Men is unacceptable, to say the least, generally speaking, and also very difficult to understand from a purely legal point of view. For instance, basing on the legal principle of estoppel, it should not be argued or asserted that Tai Ji Men have to pay taxes for the disputed year 1992, as there should be no dispute at all, being this a clear contradiction. Also, if we take into account another different principle, the one of legitimate expectation or legal certainty, according to which those who act in good faith on the basis of the law as it is, or it seems to be, should not be frustrated in their expectations. And this obviously does apply to the Tai Ji Men case, when all the courts, as was recalled by all previous presenters, have ascertained that Tai Ji Men should not pay taxes for the explained reasons. So, as European Federation for Freedom of Belief, I personally hope and wish that this case involving Tai Ji Men can be concluded in the best possible way, honoring on one side Tai Ji Men and their reputation in the country and internationally, and also could honor Taiwan's democratic achievements and commitments for the safeguard of human rights and fundamental freedoms. So our expectation, and I believe it's everyone's expectation in the audience and in the panel, is that Taiwan will honor these principles, and by complying with them, will finally fully meet all the legal expectations of Tai Ji Men and its membership in this matter. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. And now I give the floor to the last speaker, not least, of course. It's Massimo Introvigne, who is the director who directed the movie that we just saw today, and who is an Italian sociologist, and he is the managing director of CESNUR. Massimo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Before I speak, I see we still have time for a video prepared by Tai Ji Men in Taiwan and showing one particular aspect of what happened. So I will offer some short remarks, but first of all, I suggest we take advantage of some time we have and watch this video.
The Tai Ji Men case of injustice stemmed from a religious group crackdown. The prosecutor illegally indicted Tai Ji Men and referred it to the National Taxation Bureau for taxation. At the public hearing held by the Legislative Yuan on June 17, 2010, the Ministry of Finance and the National Taxation Bureau promised to close this case, but the case remains unsolved today. In 2007, the case has been confirmed not guilty by the Supreme Court. In 2009, Tai Ji Men received national compensation for wrongful detention. Ministry of Finance and National Taxation Bureau should revoke the illegal tax bills right away.
The decisions of all three court trials confirmed the defendants were not guilty, and the court ruling point out the red envelopes given by the Dizi to their shifu are gift in nature, and are tax-free income under Article 4, subparagraph 17 of the Income Tax Act, and that items such as the uniforms collectively purchased by the Dizi were handled by some Dizi on behalf of others without any profit-oriented sales. For 10 plus years, the National Taxation Bureau has been using the untrue illegitimate indictment to issue illegal tax bills, commit forgeries, suppress evidence, treat their superiors and subordinates, and cheat the legislator, the control yuan, the judges, the media, the public, and all the people in our country.
I know this issue has wasted too much time and resource. This is very serious, and it has shaken the 5 branches of government and the foundation of the nation.
The whole judicial system has proved Tai Ji Men innocent. There is no way the investigation by the tax agencies is clearer than that by the judicial department. If you're stuck in a case for more than 10 years, how much pain, how much suffering have you gone through? How can you compensate for the victim's losses?
The red envelope is a way for Dizi to respect their shifu in traditional cultures. I've never heard that it should be taxed. The Chinese Martial Arts Association, Qigong Association, and Taipei Martial Arts Association in October 2003 have publicly declared that none of the member organizations of these three associations has been taxed due to the red envelopes. So this illegal taxation by the NTB on Tai Ji Men is a direct insult on all national martial arts and Qigong organizations.
In the criminal and legislative aspects, Tai Ji Men has been declared innocent of all charges. Tai Ji Men has won the case. As for the National Taxation Bureau in the executive yuan system, our appeal has been heard in the Supreme Court. The final decision of the three court trials confirmed Tai Ji Men innocent. At the National Taxation Bureau, within the Ministry of Finance's appeal system, Tai Ji Men once again won the case. Even the control yuan decided that Tai Ji Men is innocent. I can't think of any ways after numerous legislators have inquired regarding this case. I can't think of any other course of action in our country's legal system can be taken to solve the case. I really don't know what is going on. Is it how our country's legal system is designed?
This case has been dragged for more than 10 years and is unable to be resolved. The administrative agencies have to take full responsibility, while the administrative agencies exercise administrative discretion. They have to ensure that people's human rights on taxation are protected, which is the most important spirit and objective.
Regarding the meaning of the red envelope, is it kind of gift or income of a crane school? In terms of the economic substantial meaning regarding Tai Ji Men, at first you have to nail down what given the red envelope. It is different from that of a crane school. Second, it is permanent. It is weird. The tutoring classes always have a certain duration. Some tutoring schools allow you to go to the classes once again after you fail an admission test, but Tai Ji Men Qigong makes you healthier as long as you practice it. The whole definition is not the same.
Criminal proceeds should be forfeited. Only lawful income is taxable. This too cannot exist at the same time. I think it is very strange. During the investigation before the court ruling, the prosecutor leaked the information to the tax bureau, asked them to levy the tax. I believe these two actions cannot exist at the same time. In fact, it is contradictory. It violates the principle of double jeopardy. If one is right, the other must be wrong.
The National Tax Bureau issued the tax bill. Did not conduct any factual investigation. It directly used unlawful bill of indictment as its basis to issue the tax bill. In the 31st meeting of the Committee of Finance and Economic on September 2, 2009, the Control Yuan issued a correction in its 98 Tai Zi number 098220593 circular. The Control Yuan stated in the report that the NTB had failed to fulfill its duties of factual investigation and assessment when handling the Tai Ji Men tax case, nor did it clarify the nature of income ex officio. This is clearly a suspected negligence of duty. Moreover, the NTB's recordation in the contents of its survey list was sloppy and careless and failed to pay attention to evidence, both favorable and unfavorable, to the taxpayer. Therefore, the Control Yuan had demanded the NTB for improvement.
Tai Ji Men does not have members, does not have students, nor teachers. There are only two things, Shifu and Dizi. Deputy Minister, please take a look. Each of us said the red envelopes were gifts. This is a copy of my response. I said it was gift. We all responded. Gift. Gift. All of us said they were gifts. Gift in nature. This said so too. All 30 of us here said so. They said none of us said those were gifts. Deputy Minister, please look at our copies. Legislators, please take a look too. We all said those were gifts. Given a gift only concerned my Shifu and me. In what capacity did they get to decide whether that was gift or not? Even if that involved gift tax, they should tax me, the giver, not the receiver. Besides, as long as I didn't give more than NTD 1 billion in that year, who are they to say anything? In what capacity did they get to decide whether that was a gift or not? Over the past 10 plus years, Tai Ji Men Dizi are deeply pained. Years ago, in order to improve my physical and emotional health, I gave a red envelope to my Shifu. And then, The monetary gifts, the red envelopes, were used by the tax officers to frame my shifu. Each of us feels the pain. We have cried so many nights that our tears have run dry. As martial artists, we will no longer accept such injustice. If this matter is not settled today, we will continue to fight for our rights.
If the Tai Ji Men case cannot be resolved, taxation human rights do not exist. So many people. If so many people have appealed, yet this grievance still cannot be rectified, then there's no human rights at all.
And now everyone is here. All the information and evidence is here. It's spread out everywhere on the floor. You clearly know that you are wrong. What you said in the past is questionable, but you want to continue to make the same mistake? That's really bad. We request the Ministry of Finance to complete this case in 2 months. What to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Don't delay anymore.
Let the NTB of the Central Area submit the report to the Ministry of Finance. It's the NTB of the Central Area. It's not good to let them take full responsibility. Just report to the ministry. This is all I will say. Okay, we'll do as the Deputy Minister says. We'll send our official report to the Ministry of Finance. Just now we said to dismiss, to revoke it. Okay, the Taxation Bureau of the Central Area will report to the Ministry of Finance.
After the public hearing, the Minister of Finance issues an official letter to Legislator Tian in July 22, 2010, and sent it to the office of Legislator Tu Xingzhe as well, and then sent it to Legislator Justin Chiu on the 30th. He stated clearly that they had asked the NTB of the Central Area to revoke the tax bill in accordance with the Article 40 of the Tax Collection Act. So the NTB of the Central Area should have followed the document of the Ministry of Finance to revoke the execution, but it did not. Instead, it issued a letter to the Hsinchu branch of the Administrative Enforcement Agency, asking it to refer to the provision of Item 3, Article 9 of the Administrative Execution Act, and stop the execution. According to the decision of the public hearing, the NTB should have revoked the execution. How come it shirked the responsibility to the Administrative Enforcement Agency? At that time, the NTB of the Central Area sent a letter saying that the year 1991, 1993 to 1996 are still undergoing appeal. It said if the decision of the appeal were different, it would be of a great influence for the taxpayer. So he asked the Hsinchu branch to stop the execution. Now that the tax amount for the year 1991, 1993 to 1996 has been corrected to 0, the year 1992 should be 0 too. How can it be different from the other years? How can it be illegally executed? So the tax bills are illegal from the very beginning. The NTB of the Central Area should revoke the execution.
In 2007, the Supreme Court affirmed the monetary gifts were tax-exempt in accordance with the law. In 2012, the National Taxation Bureau announced a public survey and collected 7,401 copies of testimonies proving that the monetary gifts are 100% gifts. The National Taxation Bureau has also agreed that Tai Ji Men is not a cram school. In 2018, the Supreme Court determined that Tai Ji Men is an organization of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation. In 2019, the National Taxation Bureau corrected the tax amount for the year of 1991, 1993 to 1996 to 0, but it treats the red envelopes in 1992 as tuition fees and issued tax bills. From 2010 until now, thousands of days have passed. The National Taxation Bureau still has not withdrawn its execution. Snatch civilian property.
Yes, I believe we heard a lot, and some people can say, what is this all about? Because when I was in law school, I learned that there are crimes against property and crimes against life. And crimes against property are not to be treated lightly, but are somewhat less serious. After all, if somebody comes and steals my money, it's bad. But if somebody comes and physically hurts me or kills me, it's much worse. So somebody can ask, with thousands of people beaten, tortured, and killed for their faith or belief around the world, why are we devoting our time and the valuable time of those who are listening? And by the way, there are 400 people more right now listening on the parallel streaming on YouTube. So why are we using the time of so many people for a question of money? And the answer is because it's not a question of money. That's the long and the short, the crux and the paradox of this case. If it was a question of money, it would have been settled at least 10 years ago. It would have been, as we all say, much less expensive, let alone time-consuming, for Tai Ji Men just to settle and pay the year 92. They spent a lot of time and a lot of money. Just imagine how many lawyers were involved. But also you have seen in the videos how many people took to the street, demonstrated, wrote articles, wrote letters to their legislators, contacting domestic and international human rights organizations. What an enormous amount of time and money spent. And from this, it's obvious it's not about the tax bill for the year 92. It's about conscience. As we heard from Damon Tsai, Tai Ji Men are very proud that they persuaded the United Nations to institute a yearly International Day of Conscience. So they are people of conscience. They believe conscience is very important. And they do not want to admit what is not true. That they evaded taxes, if only in the year 92, because they didn't, because it would be a lie, and because it would run against the core of the Tai Ji Men experience, then it's to be law-abiding good citizens, uphold the primacy of the conscience, and not lie. So that's why all what we have been discussed in the last almost 2 hours happened. We heard from Willy Fautre, people were almost tortured or at least stayed in jail in inhuman condition. We heard from others, people lost their jobs, were bullied in schools, were ridiculed or mistreated in the media. And all this to uphold a position of principle. It's not about the money. Collecting the money and paying 92 would have been very easy. Resisting had been very difficult. This is the first comment. Why this case is unique, it's important, it's even sensational, because we see people fighting for years and years, not for a question of money, but on the contrary, putting principle before money. But there is a second reason why I believe those who stayed with us in these 2 hours didn't waste their time. And it's our starting point that Marco Respinti underlined, and it's the connection between tax justice and freedom of religion. Because we are now seeing disturbing signs that in more than one country, governments or bureaucrats or politicians are proposing to get rid of annoying groups for whatever reason they do not like, through tax tools. Just at this Ministerial to advance religious freedom, some of us participated in another event yesterday about a new law in France. Now, this law is allegedly against radical Islam, but since for constitutional reasons, you cannot have a law against radical Islam or targeting one specific religion. In fact, the law, which grew to become a big law, 25 pages, it's a law instituting more control about religion. And the one part which has been overlooked, it's more control on gift, donations, how they are collected, how they are used. And that's, of course, very legitimate, because it's clear collecting and using gifts may be misused for illegal purposes, but as in the movie Willy Fautre told us, there are unfortunately precedents in France. In 3 different cases, the European Court of Human Rights ruled against France because France first put some religions in the category of cults and then declared that gifts collected by cults are not gifts and became taxable. And as I say, 3 times, in the case of the Jehovah's Witnesses, in the case of the Mandarin, and in the case of the Pentecostal Church of Besançon, France lost at the European Court of Human Rights, and then to give this money back to the concerned spiritual groups involved. And more recently, just a few days ago, we saw another disturbing discussion in the Parliament of Israel, where some members of the parliament suggested that gifts should be taxed if they are given to controversial groups, by which they mean Messianic Jews, which of course are not popular in Israel for religious reasons, and also this guy mentioned in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So we see that the problem of the Tai Ji Men tax case in Taiwan is not about Taiwan only, because there is a very disturbing international trend to use tax law to discriminate against groups which are unpopular or which cross the way of some politician or bureaucrat. So that's why we plan to continue to study the Tai Ji Men case and to ask justice for Tai Ji Men, because this case may become a bad or perhaps a good, important international precedent. And our next step will be to publish a white paper summing up what happened and calling the attention of the international community on the importance of this case. So I thank all of you for the attention to the movie I directed, and hope you will also read the white paper, which will be published within the next few days or weeks.
Thank you, Massimo. And it's Your speech is, in fact, it's very much goes in the same side, in the same direction as the questions, because they have two questions in the chat room, and both of them, they are about accountability. So the first one is, I will read it. The courts and legislature of Taiwan have repeatedly ordered the tax office to stop their tax case against the Tai Ji Men. The oversight branch had found the Tai Ji Men tax case one of the most severe human rights violations in Taiwan. Since Taiwan is not a member of the United Nations and there is no human rights court in Asia, is there any international mechanism for victims of human rights violations, such as in the case of Tai Ji Men, with the tax office seizing Tai Ji Men property in defiance of court orders? So perhaps Massimo, you would, and in fact, the other question is, I would say it's quite similar. Is about the accountability. So it's like how human rights offenders are held accountable in other countries. So if there are any examples that can be applicable to the Tai Ji Men case in Taiwan. Massimo, perhaps you would like to answer?
And I believe I will ask also Ken Jacobsen, because he wrote an article about the Tai Ji Men case where he discusses specifically this issue, the consequences of the fact that Taiwan is not a member of United Nations. So my comment is just a short comment. There is a legal side and there is a moral side. Legally, of course, Taiwan is not a member of United Nations, so there are a number of remedies which will typically be used, but in this case cannot be used. But morally, the government of Taiwan should remember that one of the drafters of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was from Taiwan, was from Republic of China. So even if they are not or no longer a member of the United Nations, I believe they should feel morally bound by international human rights law, also remembering the important and valuable contribution the Republic of China gave to the creation of international human rights law. And so my part of this is just to call the attention on the moral duty by the authorities in Taiwan to uphold the human rights. And also, as some of us mentioned it, there will be a political expediency in this, because we all know Taiwan is in a difficult moment. They need friends and they need a good international image, and it's part of their good image that if you compare Taiwan to mainland China, the situation of religious liberty in Taiwan is much better. It's in general, it's a good situation. As we say, the Tai Ji Men case is a relic of the past, which should be taken care of. So to continue promoting this good image, I believe Taiwan has all interest, let alone a moral duty, to follow the provision of international human rights law, even if they are not currently a member of the United Nations. But I believe Ken Jacobsen may give perhaps a more technical answer.
Yeah, I hope I can give a good answer. I don't know that you'll be satisfied with it, but technically you're correct. Taiwan is in an unusual situation in that it is not a member of the United Nations, yet it's a country. We recognize it as a country. Other countries recognize Taiwan as its own independent country and not an appendage of China as China believes it to be. So the mechanisms, the legal mechanisms that might otherwise be available on the international stage are not available because of this very unusual situation that Taiwan is in. But Massimo, I believe with you, I want to follow up on a point that you ended with, and that is that the unusual thing about, and as this, I said this before in my remarks, the unusual thing about the Tai Ji Men tax case is this is not a question of the government itself outwardly violating human rights and doing things that are wrong, which is usually the case when you have an international tribunal or some international mechanism to correct a government that itself has run amok, a government that is violating human rights, a president, a dictator, someone on the government level that has engaged in conduct that has still deprived religious liberty or otherwise impacted human rights. Here, the government of Taiwan, as I said before, on all levels, on all of its constitutional levels, has said the right thing. It just hasn't performed as it should have. So, to me, it's really less about international pressure or even international mechanisms, technical and legal mechanisms that would compel Taiwan to do the right thing. It's getting the government, getting the president, getting the people already in power who have said that this is wrong to back up their words and take care and clean up their own house. And I think that comes from forums like this and from bringing pressure on Taiwan itself by saying, if you want to be a democracy, and most importantly, if you believe in the rule of law and follow the rule of law, then clean up your own house. Get your own house in order, because this is not a disagreement with the government, with the executive yuan, with the control yuan, with the legislative yuan, with them. This is not a disagreement over their policies. It's a rogue and renegade tax agency. So the absence of legal technical mechanisms on an international level are unfortunate, but I think that the real pressure can and should be on those members of government who recognize that there's been an injustice to do something about it. And that comes from them having the backbone to do it, and it comes from pressure being brought to bear on them to do it. That's my view about this. It's an unusual situation. We're not talking about, genocide by a government. We're not talking about human rights violations by the president or by the premier or the prime minister of a country. We're not talking about things where the international community and rules of law can be brought to bear. We're talking about a government that has recognized something was wrong, is wrong, and has not corrected it. And, that it has to do.
And I have a question specifically addressed to you. Is that U.S. as a friend of Taiwan, if anything U.S. can do to help the Tai Ji Men?
Well, I think that, and I know that Dizi in the United States have written to our government and have written to Vice President, now President-elect Biden, and he will be president-elect. I know that the DC in Los Angeles and other places have written to our government, including Vice President Biden and others, to try and weigh in. Realistically, I don't think that the government will do anything. We're still in turmoil just in figuring out the election, even though there's no question in my mind that Vice President Biden will be the president of the United States. I think that our government, if it wanted to weigh in, this would not be a priority in the sense that we're dealing like everyone else is with COVID. We're dealing with the transition that is not going smoothly, and we're dealing with a lot of other things. So I think it would take some time before something like this could get on the radar screen of the United States government to weigh in formally. I'm not saying that can't happen or won't happen or shouldn't happen. I'm just saying realistically, it's unlikely that anything can or will be done within the next several months. But having said that, I mean, we are a very strong ally of Taiwan, and that goes whether it's our existing president or the president-elect. We're a very strong ally of Taiwan, which is from a level of a United States citizen, but also the level of someone who cares very much about Taiwan. It's heartbreaking to see how this has been allowed to happen by the government there.
Thank you. Is a similar question is to Willy Fautre, is about that Taiwan is in good relation with the European Union. Is anything that European Union can do to help Tai Ji Men? Willy?
Thank you for giving me the floor about the accountability issue. First of all, we have to recognize that Taiwan is in a sort of a black hole as far as international law is concerned. But there are other avenues, I think, that can be explored. And the first step that was made after, during many years, the case was just a domestic issue that was not known at all outside the island. Now it's on the radar screen of the international community. And I see a few channels through which some pressure could be put on the authorities of Taiwan to restore their image, which is usually very good concerning human rights, but nobody is perfect, and Taiwan, like any other country, is not perfect either. So talking about the European Union, there are all sorts of dialogues, including the human rights dialogues between the European Union and various countries around the world. And Taiwan is one of them. So in that framework, if we could make the European Union highly aware of that problem and put that on the agenda of the next dialogue with Taiwan, I think it will be a positive step. But also inside the European Union, there are a number of countries that have special mechanisms, such as in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Italy, trying to promote human rights in general, and also religious freedom in particular, through their bilateral relations. And I think again that making aware those mechanisms that there is a problem in Taiwan with that specific group, the Tai Ji Men, would be another step, positive step, contributing to include this problem in their dialogue with Taipei.
Thank you, Willy. And I see that Marco wants to add about the role of the press. Please, Marco, go ahead.
Just a quick thought. It was too early for me to express it before, since I was the first one to speak earlier today, but someone suggested it, and I want to focus just for a second on the role of the press. I mean, the press is another powerful tool, just like taxes. The press is again a tool which can easily uphold, destroy groups, person, people, governments. I think that international press has insufficiently covered the Tai Ji Men case, but the Tai Ji Men case deserves to get to the great public, to the public at large, since it's, I mean, even if people don't know all the details and all the spiritual doctrine of the Tai Ji Men, people will be easily captured for the best by these unqualifiable piece of injustice. In this moment in which, you know, due to the pandemic of the COVID, people are very sensible to money question and to taxes and all these thing. I think that the press has a wonderful occasion to underline the injustice that Tai Ji Men is suffering. And even if we correctly say that the Tai Ji Men case is not a money question, the press has a great occasion to show that money questions sometimes go to a more to a deeper level, to a spiritual, to a cultural level. I think it's a great occasion. If we miss this occasion, we cannot blame the others and say, you know, that everyone criticize the press. I don't want to sound too much rhetorical or idealistic, but the press has a great role and should use it every day for the Tai Ji Men, which is for the Tai Ji Men case, which again is not only a Tai Ji Men thing. This is a suggestion.
Thank you, Marco. I just would like, because everybody spoke, perhaps Alessandro also wants to add something, because it's like normally it's like it seems that this question is very much internal Taiwanese question, but at the same time it's the biggest problem, if I perceive it well, is the biggest problem is the coherence of the Taiwanese institutions in implementing or implementing the same way, the same things. Would you, Alex, would like to add something about accountability or international accountability for Taiwan?
Thank you, Rosita. Well, what I just want to add is just to remark the fact that we need to keep making pressure on the Taiwanese authorities, but also internationally. Taiwan is a very small country, but the people of Taiwan are very, very active people. We need to help them through this very bad situation that Tai Ji Men is living. As it was said before, it's not a problem with Taiwan, but at the same time, it's not a problem with the tax office only. There is a problem at some level in Taiwan. We need to make pressure at that very level. And we need other countries join the United States in this fight for freedom. Because as Kenneth said, we are here, we are helping, we are very good friends, but there are many other countries that can join the United States. And we must not forget that this very event today, the Ministerial, was a creation coming from the United States. That's a very important thing. And what the Ministerial did was moving thousands of people from all over the world. We all were excited in 2018 for the very first ever Ministerial, very first initiative of this kind in the world ever. It was a success, and immediately it attracted international attention. More and more governments joined in this very important movement. So we need to keep working at that very level. And so the United States and all the other countries fighting for this freedom, helping Tai Ji Men and Taiwan, generally speaking, because there are no other means that we have. We have no legal means, no international human rights systems that can permit Tai Ji Men to solve this problem. But because at national level, there are many people of goodwill, also among the Taiwanese politicians, all these supporters of Tai Ji Men, we can be side by side with them, helping them solving this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So I believe that the general consensus is that there is a serious problem with Tai Ji Men in Taiwan, and that certain things may be even done from outside of as well. So, and I have the last question, which is not about the tax question. It's not about the taxes, but the famous scholar Eileen Barker is asking: Can we be told in what ways, if any, Tai Ji Men differs from the other Qigong martial arts movements to be found in Taiwan? And I believe Massimo is the right person to answer that question. Massimo?
Yes, I'm an outside observer, so perhaps Damon Tsai will like to add something. But I'm a scholar of religious movements in Eastern Asia. My impression as an outside observer is Tai Chi Men, in a way, it's a traditionalist, not only a traditional school of Qigong. Because many of us, I believe, have heard about Falun Gong, which, for reasons connected to what happens to Falun Gong in China, is the most famous group of Qigong in the world. But Falun Gong is admittedly, and I don't say this in a negative way, because I believe innovation and creativity also have a place in spirituality. But Falun Gong's founder was very creative, so he put together Qigong with some Western ideas, UFOs, ideas we connect with the New Age in general, traditional Chinese millenarianism, and he created something very much new. So Falun Gong is a typical new religious movement, while Tai Chi Men is a more traditional Menpai or school of Qigong, which wants to be very faithful to the roots of Qigong and also to the connection between Qigong and esoteric Taoism. In fact, one can say that Tai Chi Men also insists on the fact that members should never separate the exercises of Qigong from self-cultivation and also from morality, being good citizens, respecting traditional morals, including paying taxes, by the way. But that's also traditional in Qigong. If you look at the history of Qigong in China, it has always been accompanied by an insistence on leading a moral life. So, only the only innovation in Dr. Hong's idea of Qigong is that nowadays, in the 21st century, being a good citizen means being a global citizen. Dr. Hong joined a very venerable and old NGO called the Association of World Citizens. I believe he became the vice president of this European very old association. So the only difference or development or update with respect to the traditional idea that in order to be a good practitioner of Qigong, you need to be a good citizen, is Dr. Hong interpret this as a global citizen, very much committed to working with the United Nations, promoting international exchange, organizing intercultural, interreligious, international events. But apart from this, I would say that while other schools of Qigong, to use a word very much criticized in some quarters, are syncretistic, because they put together Qigong with other elements coming from different traditions. To me, Tai Ji Men is a traditional and traditionalist Qigong school, which wants to adhere very strictly to what they say as the 1,000-old uninterrupted tradition of Qigong Menpai or schools. But perhaps Damon wants to add something, and I insist this is my impression from outside, his experience from inside maybe.
Before going back to you, Eileen is asking additional question. Is there anything that would make them be seen as different that would be a reason for their like different treatment, Massimo?
I believe that's the question of the reasons of the persecution, which is an important question. And I believe we should go back to 96. What happens in 96 is a word we all learned because it's now widely used in China, Seijiao, gained currency in the Taiwanese debate. And Seijiao is translated in mainland China as cult or evil cult, but really is a very, very old Chinese expression. Now there is a book about it by a Chinese scholar. It dates back to the Ming era, but perhaps even before. And it's now clear that historically Seijiao is a group the government perceives as against or anti-government, a religious group which is perceived as anti-government. So what happens in 96 is in Taiwan we have the first direct election of the president of the republic. Somebody wins and somebody loses. And some very large religious and spiritual groups took side in the elections. And those who lost were or supported the candidate who lost were subject to a large crackdown, which really targeted some of the big movements. Tai Ji Men, I would say, is a medium-sized movement, but some of the large movements, including Foguanshan, were also targeted because they were perceived as being against the party that won the elections. Almost all of these cases ended in nothing, on the led to the religious leaders who had been incriminated and sometimes arrested, be declared innocent. Now, Tai Ji Men had no direct political involvement, but for reasons very much obscure even to Taiwanese scholars, there is a book about the Tai Ji Men case, and it's very much unclear whether they came to be perceived by a part of the politically winning side as being sympathetic to the opposition or hostile to the government. So in 96, there is a large crackdown against many religious groups, and Tai Ji Men is also involved. And Tai Ji Men has this byproduct, which is the tax case, which went on for so many years. But I don't believe there is anything in their way of practicing Qigong which single them out for persecution. And unlike what happened before under the martial law, what happened in 96, I believe, was purely political. Prosecutor who tried to create an anti-cult association to fight Tai Ji Men, and it collapsed almost immediately. And I believe it collapsed precisely because the case was primarily political, and there was not much to criticize in Tai Ji Men, which is not part of traditional Qigong. And the last comment, I'm sorry if the answer was a little bit long, the last comment is in Taiwan, there is an association of Qigong groups, of which, by the way, Falun Gong is not part. It's the Association of Traditional Qigong Schools. And this association has always been very vocal in supporting Tai Ji Men as a legitimate and indeed typical part of traditional Qigong schools.
So we see that we need another session side event about the movement itself. So I will give very quickly Damon the floor to you if you want something to add. But I ask to be very quick because it's already 10 minutes past 7. So I believe 2 hours is very long for events. So I would ask you to be very quick, and then we will wrap up.
Okay, no problem. So I think compared to the other Qigong and martial art group in Taiwan, I think legally we are all the same because we are registered under the Ministry of the Interior. And like we see from the video, the chairman of the Chinese Martial Art Federation also mentioned that the no martial art or Qigong organization has ever been taxed for this like the red envelope the Dizi provide to Shifu. So we also consult many experts in Taiwan why this happened on Tai Ji Men. So we are also talking about the atmosphere back that year because many scholars mentioned that the political rule of the government at that time were required to crack down, and the Tai Ji Men happened to be one of the victims. So what we heard is that there's a lot of the blackmail for all the different organizations. Not all, but some religious organization. And even like Tai Ji Men, our case, both district, the prosecutor Hsinchu and the Kaohsiung, they all received the blackmail. But then they just closed the case because they don't think we are frauding and government. Only the prosecutor Hall, when he got the blackmail, he just bring the media, he bring the office with the guns, just run into the Tai Ji Men and say we are doing something wrong. So I think that is really depends on the society atmosphere and also prosecute Ho, the way he's doing. So maybe you don't know that because in the Taiwan media, he has a nickname. They call the prosecutor Lambo because he always like to handle the big case. And another case, he prosecuted over 300 policemen, and most of them in the end, they are all innocent. So I think that is really depends on someone. If he don't have the conscience, then he will make some people or organization into the trouble. So I think the key message here is that the martial art, we are all the same because from the Chinese word, the meaning of the martial art means the stop the war, just like we do. So I think we are all part of the martial art group in the end.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I just like before ending the meeting, I would just like if Willy has would like something to add before we finish. Micro, please. Willy, micro.
Yes. Yeah, just a very short conclusion. I have the deep belief that the problem can be solved, but we must continue to keep the issue on the radar for the international community and involve one by one those European countries in particular that have a specific institution to promote freedom of religion or belief, to use their channels, to use their bilateral relations to convince the authorities in Taiwan that it would be best for the image of the country to put an end to this very sad story.
Great.
Thank you, Willy. And Massimo, would you like to conclude the meeting? Massimo, micro.
No, I don't really have anything to add except I want to thank Rosita for chairing the meeting and the CESNUR staff, particularly Daniela Movolenta in Torino, for organizing the technical side, which is in the background, but is always very important. And to thank also on behalf of Willy and Human Rights Without Frontiers all the speakers and the very patient audience.
Yes.
We suggested that those who wanted to interact more actively follows on Zoom, and those who preferred mostly to listen follows on YouTube. And as I said, we had more than 400 participants on YouTube in addition to the Zoom. So it has been a successful event, and I hope it will call the international attention on Tai Ji Men case. And I would recommend to those who want to know more to read the articles of Willy Fautre, which are published on the website of Human Rights Without Frontiers, to read the academic study of the tax case by Ken Jacobsen, which is published in the immediately past issue with respect to the current one of the Journal of CESNUR, which is at CESNUR.net. And if you keep following the CESNUR and Human Rights Without Frontiers website, pretty soon we will both publish a white paper summarizing all what happened in these past 24 years in Taiwan. So thank you to all, and see you soon for this or perhaps